Welcome to Lift Leadership Podcast with Bobby Alger. Each episode, Bobby will share insights and tips from his over 25 years of church leadership experience. For new episodes and more information, please visit crossroadswinchester.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Lift Leadership. Today we're going to look at a topic called the releasing leader. And it's probably one of the most difficult ones for a leader to grasp, and that is releasing others into their calling or maybe expand the organization. One of the reasons why I say it's so difficult is that for a leader to release somebody else, it means oftentimes that they love what they're doing as a leader, and then to release somebody else into doing that is really hard because you like what you're doing. Or another aspect is that for the organization to grow, you need to release or teach people how to do something that you don't like doing. And so from that point of view, sometimes you don't have the patience to help somebody start something that you don't really like to do. So it's kind of two sides of the coin. In one sense, it's hard to release somebody into what you like to do. And then the other side is releasing people into something you don't like to do and have the patience for that. So we're going to jump in today and talk about what it means to become a releasing leader. First of all, I just want to define what the word release means so that we can be on the same page together. It really means to allow someone to escape confinement or to set free. The definition goes on to say to allow something to move, act, or to flow freely. So when we're looking at releasing people and to help the organization grow, it means that we're being confined at the present and we want to expand, and so we need people to do that. The climate, the world cultural climate in which we live is one that is certainly more controlling than it is releasing right now. I mean, the government has stepped into healthcare, and healthcare has stepped into business, and businesses are being confronted with terminating people because of restrictive laws. And so we have this controlling type of environment that we are living in right now, which includes a lot of not trusting people, and certainly not releasing people into responsibility. And so that's kind of the climate that we're living in presently, and it takes a lot of work then to release people and to trust them into the next level. What does it mean to become a releasing leader? Having pioneered a church from scratch, now I have a staff of 6 people. I've had to learn to become a releasing leader. When you start something from scratch, basically you do everything yourself. And then as the organization grows, then suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I got to bring on people, I've got to release people, bring people up. And that was kind of tough for me because I can be a very detailed person. I have expectations of how things should go and how the finished product should look. And so when you release people in to do things that you normally do, what happens is if it doesn't turn out the way you expect, there's an internal conflict that begins to take place within you. Or I had an internal conflict because it was just different from the way that I was expecting. And I had to grow to the place to say, you know what? It's different from how I would have done it, but it's really okay because they're owning it and it's being done in a way. And so I've had to kind of grow in that aspect to become a releasing leader because of being a very detailed person and having a lot of ownership in starting something from scratch. So the starting place of really becoming a releasing leader is this: you have to release yourself. Well, what does that actually mean to release yourself? Well, a couple of things that you have to think through is like, if I don't lead, will it turn out all right? You have to be okay with that. If I don't do it, will it get done well? You have to, again, think through that. If I don't stay connected to like center stage of the vision, will someone take the vision in a direction that I don't want it to go? All of those are valid questions, and sometimes they're more internal than external. But when you think through that and come to terms with it, then you become a leader that releases others. ultimately, what I'm saying is a releasing leader begins to focus on we and not me. I heard this story about a small country church, and they had a pump organ that they would, none of the members could play anymore. And so what they would do is once a year they would bring in a guy from the local university that was a music professor, and they would have a special time where they'd come and they would hire a young kid to pump the billows in the back. It was in a separate room from where the organ was stationed. And so they had one of these events where they brought the professor in from the local university that could play, and he was again playing the numbers. They had the little boy was in the back pumping the billows, and he was sweating, and so at halftime the little boy came out, and he walked over to the professor and said, "How are we doing?" And the professor said, "We? What do you mean we? I'm the one that's playing. I'm the one that's playing. I've studied music for years. I've practiced for hours, and you're just the one pumping the air." Well, the little boy hung his head, and he went back into the room, and they started the second half. Well, you can probably guess what happened. The professor went down on the keys, and there was no sound. And he went down the second time, and there was no sound. And finally yelled back to the boy, "Pump the billows." Nothing happened, and all of a sudden he saw a little face around the side of the organ, and the little boy said, "Just say we." Sometimes we have to realize it's not about me, but it's about we. And to become a releasing leader, we have to realize that it's beyond us now, and we have to again allow others to come alongside of the vision that we may have started. Some years ago, my wife and I were doing some counseling, and our counselor made this bold statement, and she said that everybody that's in the profession I'm in, being a pastor for 25 years now, anybody that's in our profession is codependent upon something. And that was such a bold statement. I was like, wow, because I didn't think I was. And yet her having made that statement, I decided, well, I need to kind of evaluate my life and see if I am codependent somewhere on something or someone. And sure enough, I discovered where I was, and so I had to take some time to be able to break that codependency so that I could be free myself. And I don't know what kind of a occupation or leadership you're in, but you're probably codependent upon something or someone at some point, and it would be a good thing to just evaluate and see where that is, and then begin to work on it. What do I mean by codependency? Well, really, if you dive into the definition in related, say, job-wise, it's your job approval is solely based upon what others think and say and commend you for, rather than having an internal acceptance of a job well done. That's the difference. Lori Rensel makes this definition about codependency. She says, when you are conditioned to believe other people's approval is necessary for your security. Let me say that again. You're codependent when you are conditioned to believe other people's approval is necessary for your security. When you look at it that way, we're probably all guilty at some point along the way of being tied to the thing that we love, that then we don't release others and expand the ministry because of that codependency that's in place. Well, how do we break free of that? I want to give you just a few things of what I would call a summary of releasing ourselves so that we can release others. First of all, we have to be in touch with our own ego. That is, other people doing what we love, or maybe helping other people get started in something that we don't love. And that all has to do with our ego that we have to get over and decide that we're going to grow by releasing others. The second aspect is what I mentioned briefly, and that is our insecurities. One of the things that helped me get over my insecurities was doing an evaluation of my strengths and weaknesses. And there's a tool called Strength Finders that's on the internet. In fact, I'm going to put the link below that you can go and click on that and go to a place. In fact, I found a website that has 4 different, evaluations or 4 different companies that do Strength Finder type of evaluations. And so you can find one that fits you out of the link below. But I think that's really a great exercise in releasing others to understand what we're strong at and what we're weak at. And then we can find people to come around our weaknesses and then because they have strengths in that area and help us get over our insecurities. Here's another aspect about the fact that we might not release others is just complicated systems. Normally people, they're not going to fight through bureaucracy to step into something new. Now this can happen in any kind of organization, but particularly in a church setting or maybe a volunteer organization, there can be a lot of bureaucracy that builds up over time. And we just have to stop and evaluate it. How do we make it simple for people to get on board and get on the on-ramp and to be able to be released into the next level to help the organization flow more properly? And so complicated systems, again, can stop us from releasing others. Here's another one that I thought, wow, when I saw it, I was like, well, this is definitely the case. And that is sometimes we as leaders are so busy that we don't notice what other people's potential is. We're so busy focusing on the task at hand and getting the task done, and that becomes kind of our road that we walk down, get the next task done, that we don't have time to observe what other people's potential is in helping them step into the next level or us releasing them. So busyness seems to keep us focused on more of the task side of what we're doing rather than the people side of what we're doing, and encouraging people to step in and take hold of what they would desire. So now that we're ready to release others, how do we start? How do we start in releasing others into what they've been called to do, or maybe help share the responsibility of the organization that we're in? There's a verse in the Bible that comes out of the book of Romans. It says, "For by the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think, but rather think of yourselves with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you." What that verse tells me is that I need to think with sober judgment or real evaluations. It says, don't think of myself higher than I should, maybe out of my ego or out of what I enjoy doing, but rather think with sober judgment what needs to be done. Now, most of the time, people think of themselves more lowly of themselves than more highly of themselves. That's just kind of human nature, that we think less of ourselves than more. But this quote here pulls out that we should get into a place of evaluating what actually is. And in order to do that, sometimes we need outside help or outside tools to get a grasp of where we are actually at. But how do we begin to, again, identify people that we could release into the next level of our organization? Well, there's 3 things that I want to point out. And I'll just name the 3 and then we'll look at each one in more detail. First of all is, what do they want to do? And that can come through an interview or a conversation. What do they want to do? The next one is, listen to what issues they bring up and wherever they are already involved. And the third one is, watch how effortlessly they get things done. Now let's walk into those 3 to really identify the potential in people. What do they want to do? When someone expresses interest in a certain area, pay attention to that. And they may desire to make a difference there. They perceive they have a skill, they have a natural desire to be in a certain area or do a certain job. And so, again, that can happen through an interview, that can happen through a conversation. Just ask them, if you could do anything, what would you like to do? Now, the second thing is to listen to what they bring up. I've noticed that people make suggestions. They even suggest improvements or alternative ways to do things. Sometimes it even comes across a little critical. But what's really happening is they have a desire to be involved in that area that they are critiquing. And when people are frustrated, they'll come to leadership. That means they probably need to lead something. And if you suggest to certain people that maybe they need to lead and they back off of that, then probably they're more of a support person than they are a point person. But again, you have to figure that out in conversation. My point is this, is listen to what people, what kind of issues they bring up. And as a result of that, you can see where their potential is and where you might place them to release them into your organization. The third thing I want to bring up here is finding people's potential, is watch how effortlessly they get things done. Some people are just better at certain things than others. I mean, I can write, but I am a terrible editor. My wife is amazing at both. And some people can do certain things well, and in order to complete the whole task, they need other people to come alongside of them to complete that task and do it well. I've noticed that technical people are oftentimes very orderly people and creative people. They're great at designing something, but sometimes they lack being orderly, and so or staying within the boundaries. So again, you have to figure out what kind of person that you are dealing with, and the recognition that that some people just get things done efficiently in some ways, other people don't. And that's a thing of observing how they get things done. I found this blog by Chris Lehman that was entitled Releasing Greatness into Others. And he lists 5 things that we should pay attention to in order to release others into their greatness. And I just want to borrow from him these 5 things and really talk about them with you here for a few moments. The first one he mentions is that when you release a new leader, learn to be comfortable with a slower performance. I thought, wow, that's so true, because we're used to doing something and we're doing it very efficiently. We're kind of like this well-oiled machine, and we get it done well. And then we pass that job along to somebody else. It just doesn't happen in the length of time, or is as efficient as we could do it. And the tendency is then to take it back. But the reality is, and he states that really we should be prepared that when you give a job over to somebody else, it can take as much as 10 times longer the first time. He says the second time it'll take 8 times longer, but the third time they do what you've given them to do, it's probably 2 to 3 times longer than when you would normally do that. And so I thought that was really interesting insight into the fact that we sometimes expect people, when we release them into a new area or a new job, we expect them to do it as better or as good as we've done it. And that's simply not true. We have to make an adjustment that way. I had a lawn business for about 8 years, and my sons were the original ones that helped me. And I tell you what, we flowed really, really well. We just knew how to work together. And then later on, my sons went off to school and they did other things. And I hired people in the last part before I gave the business away. I hired people to help me, and they just didn't. It took them a long time to catch on, and I would get frustrated at times because it'd take them half the season to get to the place where my sons and I were when we worked together. But I got over it, and the lawn still got mowed, and they improved over the time. And again, it was just an example that you give other people a job, it just takes them a while for them to ramp up to the same level that you normally do it, and we have to be aware of that. The second thing that he mentions is to be able to capture their dreams in making a difference. I mean, when people step into something new, you release them, they really have a dream to make a difference. That's why they're coming forward, or you're seeing the potential in them. And when you release somebody into a new job, it feels good for them. You believe that they can do it, and they believe that they can make a difference there. And so it's really good to discuss that and recognize that even though they're stepping into something they feel like they can make a difference in, they're always a little bit nervous about whether or not they can do or meet your expectations. in the new job. And so you need to be aware sometime of what's going on in their head and what's going on in your head as this transition is being made. Everybody desires to make a difference. And so what happens is that when you put people in new positions, sometimes there's a pressure that's involved in that, and people respond differently to pressure. Some people kind of muster up and rise up and get stronger. Other people kind of cave in and get weaker for a little bit. And you just have to realize that's a part of the process of the adjustments along the way when you release people into a new area that they haven't been before, have a desire to learn about. And they also, during this time, sometimes people are thinking, what if I fail? And if I fail, am I going to fail the organization? Am I going to fail the person that released me into this area? And so you just have to be aware of those thoughts that is happening inside of people's heads when you release them into a new ministry. But ultimately, they're there because they want to make a difference and they want to try something new. The third thing that's covered in releasing people into greatness is learn to coach them through the new. Learn to coach them through the new. I want to clarify something, and that is coaching is not going to them and saying, this is how I would have done it. That's the wrong way to coach, but rather you ask them, how did you understand that I wanted this done? This is what I find, is that when I release a job that I'm doing to somebody else, I find that I have done it so much, I'm so familiar with it, that I neglect to communicate certain aspects just because it's so familiar to me that I forget that, oh, that's important in getting this job done well. And so we have to realize that as they're working it through, sometimes you just didn't tell them what needed to be done, or maybe you didn't think through in explaining what needed to be done. So a great approach in coaching is asking the right questions, such as, what did you understand the job needed here? Or did you think about this? Or did I tell you this? Take responsibility that maybe you didn't communicate something as well when you release them into the new level of them being involved. When people know the standard of what you're expecting, then they'll rise up. That's just the nature of how people are. And to realize that maybe it wasn't clear in the beginning will help them again begin to think through. The ultimate goal is this: is that you don't want them to necessarily think differently than you. You want to be able to think together. That's the whole reality of coaching, is to think together. We do think differently about different ways to approach certain problems or certain jobs. That's a given because we're all different people. But we really do want to learn and coach that we can think together, and as a result, it will be a greater impact in the outcome. The fourth thing that is brought up here in releasing greatness is remember to celebrate along the way. Most people enjoy celebrating as they're learning something. Now, very few people don't like celebrating because they're so challenge-oriented that they can't wait to conquer the next hill, so to speak. But most people like to celebrate along the way. They like a high-five moment that you, as the person releasing them, coming in, say, hey, job well done. And I think that's important to celebrate along the way, even though they're still in a learning process. And as you celebrate along the way, that takes the jitters out of what they're doing, and it begins to infuse within them confidence to continue moving forward in this new position that they've entered into. The fifth aspect of releasing people into greatness is to look for ways to challenge the person in their new direction. Now, some industries have this kind of built in. Like, for instance, if you're going to the gym, you expect to be challenged. That's what a gym does. Now, if you're kind of in more of a routine job, challenge is a little more challenging, so to speak, because it's not always welcomed. The job is so routine that it's like, where do you find the challenges? So you, as the releasing leader, need to look through and say, how do I challenge somebody that's in a routine job? Again, other industries it's built in, but some it's not. And sometimes in volunteer positions, we think that as the releasing leader, we shouldn't challenge them in the new position. But yet, even in a volunteer position, people want to do well. They want to have the organization succeed. They want to enter into the vision that they have. Since COVID, we've been live streaming as a church, and even though we've been doing it for a while, I still find small tweaks along the way to enhance the quality of our presentation. And so we celebrate moments of things that have gone well, and yet oftentimes I'll find a lighting difference here and an audio silence here and an unbalanced instrument here. And so all of those things we keep tweaking along the way, and they're just little things, and yet they make a big difference over time. And most everybody can discover the big things, like the broken machines or something that didn't work. But it's really the small things that we keep looking at and tweaking along the way. And as we do that, it can be challenging to find those things. But at the same time, as we educate people in how to make those small tweaks, then we can celebrate the overall outcome along the way. And I certainly try to do that as a leader that has delegated production to somebody else, is to have those moments that we enjoy what is being done, and yet at the same time assess of what we can tweak in order to see it done better. So becoming a releasing leader is really a big growth point in leadership. It's not easy, particularly if you've started something from scratch and now you have to grow it to a place where you need to involve other people, raising them up and setting them into new positions. It's a challenge for the founding leader to do that, and I get that, because I was one, and yet I've had to change, and I find a great joy now in releasing others to help out and go beyond what I could do myself. You have to move beyond me to we. It's so important to recognize that as an organization grows and gets healthy, you have to move beyond me to we. And even after seeing the necessity of reaching others, or after seeing I need to release others, it still gets bumpy along the way because they don't perform initially like you think they should, and the outcome is different from what you thought, and you just have to go through those adjustments in order to come out the other side and realize, this is a little bit different than I thought, but it's still good, and they're owning it, and so it's a win-win for both. Not always getting the job done in the way that in the time limit that you thought. Just realize that someone starting out new is going to take longer than when you did it. Well, as we talk about releasing leaders, we definitely realize that it's needed and required for any organization to grow, and yet sometimes it's one of the hardest things that we can do. If you're a leader at the top or leading or even starting something, it's very, very challenging, and yet at the same time absolutely necessary. And the thing that I've found over the years as I've done that and recognized the need and necessity of releasing leaders into areas that they want to be in, they're called to make a difference. It's such a great joy to see that expansion and to see that growth and to see people embracing the we together. And it's no longer about a me, but it's embracing the we together and really seeing health come forth in the community in which we live. All right, there you go. That is the releasing leader. And I really encourage you to go back and take some notes, and maybe you want to sit with your group of leadership around you and discuss what I've shared today. Maybe you want to send this to a friend that you know would benefit from it. And until next time, I just encourage you to step up and lift up your leadership and learn how to release others and enjoy what it means to be a leader that releases others, and just watch the expansion then take place in your ministry or organization.